I'm Carolyn from Opus Management Resources, and I'm here today to talk to you about risk management. In our nursing homes, we have to have a risk management plan, and our administrators oversee this plan. Today we're going to talk about some safety policies we have in place to prevent certain things from happening. For instance, elopement. What are some things we have in place? For instance, we have the Wonder Guard, and every day we have CNAs that check to make sure that our customers that have doctor's orders have them on, and on the 11 to 7 shift they check and make sure that they're working. We have doors that the alarms sound if the customer gets too close, and everyone must respond if they hear those alarms go off. We also have a book on each unit that has a picture and some identifying information about customers who've been identified as potential wanderers. We also have a fire code, and that is code red. And we would announce that 3 times and the location so that everyone can respond in an appropriate manner to that alarm to keep our customers and each other safe. For medical emergencies, we say, what? That's right, code green and the location 3 times so that our nurses and other first responders can come with crash cart and other needed emergency equipment to keep our customers safe. If a customer is not supposed to have, If our customers are not supposed to have emergency CPR, then they might have a red dot on their ID band. If they're supposed to have thickened liquids, they might have a blue dot, because that alerts us that they are on thickened liquids. It would also be identified on their tray card and on their care plan. We also have a partner program, which helps to strengthen our customer satisfaction. This partner program helps the customers to get acclimated to life in our center, helps them to have a contact person to tell their concerns if they have any, help them to get introduced to their roommate, and it really helps to improve the customer satisfaction. We also have in place, if there are formal concerns that need to be resolved, a concern form, which can be found near the nurses station. And our social service department helps us also to resolve these in a timely manner. All of the Opus centers have a risk manager. Do you know who yours is? Well, if you don't, do you know who you could go to? That's right, I heard some of you say your department manager, your administrator, and you can find out who your risk manager is. That person is very important to help us keep risks under control. Risk management, in case you didn't know, is the process of minimizing risks so that we don't have liabilities that can cost the center a lot of money, cause harm to customers, and overall keep the centers in chaos and stuff that wouldn't be a very good environment for all of us to work in or the customers to live in. The nurses and the management staff fill out exception reports when we do have incidents or accidents to help us have a record of those type of events. And there's also things that we call adverse incidents in case a customer has injuries that maybe they have to seek outside medical care at a hospital. concerns in a long-term care setting could be things like pressure ulcers, but we have things in our center to help us cut down on those. When someone is admitted, we do assessments, or the nurses do, and it helps us to identify things that could cause a pressure ulcer or increase the risk for a pressure ulcer, like not having enough food to eat, not having enough fluids to drink. We must turn and position folks, and all the good care that we provide helps us to reduce those risks for the folks. Malnutrition and dehydration. We have very good meals 3 times a day. Snacks that we offer several times a day. And don't forget that bedtime snack. That's a state regulation, and we must offer that to every one of our customers. Falls. They're preventable, aren't they? For most people, if we just do a few simple things like making sure their pathways are unobstructed, making sure that we lower their bed. If someone might fall out of bed, we put blue mats beside their bed. We make sure they have proper footwear. We make sure that they have the right medicines. We make sure we monitor for side effects. All of those things together can help to prevent falls or reduce them. Some of the adverse effects that and events that we have to report could be elopement, adverse drug events, untreated and undiagnosed changes in their medical condition, improper discharge out of the center, misuse of chemical or physical restraints, and violation of resident rights. And in a little while, we're going to talk about resident rights. And every month we have what we call a quality assurance meeting. And that's when several very important people get together and they discuss certain topics. You know who those important people are? Like your medical director, your nursing home administrator, your department heads, your risk manager. And they talk about things like falls that have occurred, pressure ulcers that may have developed, employees that may have gotten injured. And they talk about how can we prevent this in the future, because we want everybody to be safe at our center. We want injuries and things, the numbers to go down. So we talk about ways that we can reduce the numbers, and that's what quality assurance is, that we want everybody to be safe and to keep those numbers low. So we talk about these things in a monthly meeting, and we track it so that we can see how we're doing, how we're progressing, and our risk manager plays a very important part in doing so. Chapter 400 of the Florida statutes says we must ensure the rights and welfare of all of our customers. And this is also part of risk management, because when we're ensuring the rights and welfare of our customers, we're also reducing risk. We provide an avenue for them to complain or voice their concerns if they have them. Do you know how we do this? Well, they can talk to us, any one of us. And if we cannot resolve their concerns right away, we have a formal concern, a form that we can fill out for them, or they can do it themselves. And each of those forms are kept by the nurse's station. We can fill it out. We can give it to social services or our manager, a nurse, and we can resolve those concerns and should, within a very short time frame, get back to the customer, let the family know what's going on, because communication is key for good customer service. We also provide ombudsman services. The customer can always call the ombudsman on their own if they wish, or they can ask us to do so and we can provide that service for them. The ombudsman is like an advocate for the customer to make sure that their rights are being protected and that we are providing the services that the customer deserves. They must come annually to do an inspection of the nursing home or any place that the elder person is living or residing to make sure that the customer's rights are being protected and preserved. The thing also that's very important for the customer is privacy. We must make sure that things like pulling the curtain, closing the blinds, knocking on doors, protecting their health information. We all know about HIPAA, right? And I bet you throughout your training you'll see a HIPAA video and it'll talk about high tech. And what that's referring to is things that we store on electronic medical records. And I know some of you out there in video land, you've been just learning about UDAs. Do you just love them? I bet you do. Now that you're getting the hang of it, it's probably making your life a little bit easier. I hope so, because that's the new revolutionizing of doing medical records, right? So we have to also remember to shut computers down. Don't share passwords where other people could see them, and make sure that we keep the customer's health information protected and only share it with those who have a need to know. Medical records must be kept on site according to the length of time that the law tells us to. Then off-site, we keep it at a place we call Iron Mountain for another given period of time, according to the law. All CNAs must also show proof of required training before we can hire them. And you must keep up your certification for a given amount of time, just like nurses have to renew their license. CNAs, you got to do the same thing. Every 2 years, we have to renew our license and we have to show proof that we have done our annual education. For CNAs, you got to have 12 hours of in-service every year. So in a given period of time, that's 24 hours of in-service for every renewal period. That's as much as a nurse. But I still know administrators, you've got to have a lot more than that. So from administrators down to CNAs, we've all got to have our required annual in-services. All staff and CNAs must have things like HIV updates. You must have Alzheimer's training. LPNs, you have to have LPN supervision. And all these required trainings helps us to take better care of our elders. And this is part of risk management too, because the more training we have, the better care we're going to provide for our elders. Okay? Part of the general rights for our customers is the right to exercise their rights as a citizen of the United States. They have a right to self-determination, which means the right to choose things like, maybe I want to go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. Maybe I want to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night. Maybe I don't want to get up until 11 a.m. You know what? I've worked in nursing for 34 years. It feels like someday I might not want to get up until 11 a.m. Does that sound good to some of you? I think it probably does. They also have the right to be free of discrimination. For instance, if there's people who might have certain conditions, we shouldn't discriminate against them. Or if they have maybe come from a different background, or they speak a different language, we should not discriminate for any reason whatsoever, okay? And also, they should be able to practice any religion whatsoever they choose, and we should give them the means to do so. And I know our centers do. On weekends, they have different pastors, they have priests that come in, sometimes rabbis. They have different services that come in and allow the customers to practice different religions. The customer also has the right to choose their own physician, their own pharmacy if they choose, as long as the physicians and the pharmacists can follow our given policies like packaging of medications and things like that, so that the nurses can pass those medications safely, then they are allowed to do so. Customers are also allowed to access their health information as long as they put that request in writing. They can also get copies of their health information at a nominal charge. They have the right to be fully informed of their health information, just like you. If you go to your doctor and you want to know, hey, what did my blood work say? Well, they may want to know those answers too, just like you and me, and we must let them know that, okay? They have the right to form advance directives, and that means like what they would want to have happen if they can no longer speak for themselves. They can put those directions in writing. Social services in each of our buildings can help people to put those kind of things in order for the customers with the help of their family if they wish. They also have the right to be given notice if they're going to have a roommate change, a room change, or if they're going to be discharged from the center. We must give them a 30 days notice, okay? If they have a complaint, we must not make them fear that they're going to be punished in some way. The formal word for that is reprisal. We must not make them fear reprisal. And the more easy word to remember is they should not be made to fear that they're going to be punished because they have a complaint about their care, maybe about the food or something like that. Instead, we should take their complaint cheerfully and say, we will do everything that we can in our power to try to make it better for you. Okay? The customer has the right to handle their own personal finances, their property, their funds, as long as they're capable. And if their family wants to help them with that, or if they choose to have us help to manage their funds, we will gladly do that. We must keep their funds separate from the center's funds in a separate trust. One of the most basic human rights is privacy, as I mentioned before. When we're doing personal care, please take care and make sure that their privacy and dignity is protected at all costs. When they have maybe a Foley catheter, please make sure that it's in a privacy bag. When they have a tube feeding and they want to go to the dining room, make sure that because maybe they're receiving pleasure foods, make sure that that's covered. Maybe they have an IV, the solution should be covered. Things like that. Cover their lap. Don't let above their knees be showing and things like that. Make sure that their clothing is buttoned. Preserve their dignity. Make sure the men are shaved. Make sure their hair is combed, their nails are clean, and things like that. Take care of them as you would want your mother, father, grandmother, grandfather to be taken care of. Okay? Activities. How many of your customers love bingo? At the centers I've been to, if bingo's canceled, look out. They will be very disappointed. They love their bingo. They love church services on the weekend. Activities of their choice is something every center should offer. So make sure that you know your customers well enough to know which of the activities they want to participate. And we should not discriminate and say, because this customer has dementia, they can't go to this activity. As long as they're not being disruptive, they should be allowed to go to any activity they want to go to. The customer and/or responsible party has the right to certain notices, like if the customer is involved in an accident, or there's going to be a transfer, or there's an injury of some sort, if there's medication changes, if there's going to be a care plan meeting, things like that. At our centers at Opus, we keep the families informed about everything because we feel communication is a right for the customers and the families to be informed about all of that because it keeps the rapport, the relationship very strong between Opus, the centers, and the families and the customers. The customer has the right to be free of abuse and restraints. Now, I want to know if you remember the 8 kinds of abuse. Do you remember? I want to hear you. Okay, I heard somebody say verbal. That's right. And physical. That's correct. And then misappropriation of property. Exploitation. Mental. That's right. Involuntary seclusion. Neglect. Sexual. Any others? I'm listening. Did we get them all? I think we did. Okay. And what is the toll-free abuse reporting number? That's right. 1-800-96-ABUSE. And what is the first thing you want to do if you happen to see or overhear suspect abuse? That's right, you want to stop it. You want to intervene because we have to protect the customer from further harm. And then we will report it. But we want to intervene and stop that abuse and make the customer feel safe. Okay? And who do we report abuse to? Our abuse coordinator, and that is the administrator in every center. And then we are going to make sure that abuse has happened. We're going to do an investigation, okay, because we want to be fair to whoever has been indicated in this abuse situation, okay? And another thing that could happen is maybe there's lost, stolen, or broken property. And we have things in place to try to figure it out. First, we're going to look for the item, okay? And because sometimes customers may say, money was stolen, or my watch, I think the CNA took it. But first, we're going to look for it because it may have just been misplaced, left in the shower when the CNA took it off. So we're going to look very carefully before we jump to conclusions. But if we can't find the item, then we're going to fill out an incident report, maybe a concern form, and then we're going to follow our lost, broken, and stolen policy, and there's different steps to that policy. Some of it may apply to replacing from the petty cash fund. Some may have to go through corporate. But whatever it is, we are going to try to make the customer happy by replacing the item. If the value of the item or cash exceeds $300, then our policy says, and the law says, we must call the police, okay? So we want to make sure that when these incidents happen, that if we're not sure what to do, we're going to talk to our managers, or we're going to go to the administrator, and we're going to say, this is what's happened, what should I do? Okay? In any situation, whether it's abuse, a lost, stolen, or broken item, or any situation that comes up, whether it's corporate integrity or anything else, if we don't know for sure what to do, we're going to go to our administrator or our department manager, and we're going to find out, aren't we? In all of these topics I talked about today, even though some of it was about Chapter 400, the Nursing Home Rules and Regulations, resident rights, or risk management, it all really boils down to risk management. And they all go hand in hand to protect our customers. And I hope you enjoyed my little talk today. Thank you. Meet Mrs. Martha, a pleasant 82-year-old, slightly confused, mostly cooperative customer of Sunnyview Care Center. She is able to make her needs known verbally, but sometimes has a minimal difficulty with word finding. Mrs. Martha put the call light on to ask to use the bathroom. Sally CNA was heading out the door after helping the roommate. She asked to use the bathroom, and Susie said, I am going to go on my break, and I will tell the other CNA to come in and help you. So she turned the call light off. What does Opus say about that? So she went on her break, and 25 minutes later, the other CNA was passing down the hall, saw the call light on, went into the room, and the customer was visibly upset and says, "Get out, liar! I want to go to the bathroom, but not you." And so then Sally CNA comes back from break, and the nurse is speaking to both of them, and the charge nurse says, "Okay, what's going on?" Well, what happened was that when Sally CNA is in the room helping the roommate, do you think maybe she should have helped Miss Martha? Do you think that's what Opus would have expected? Probably so. But instead, Miss Martha, 25 minutes later, still had not had assistance to go to the bathroom. The CNA went on her break, did not tell anybody, did not tell the nurse, did not tell her buddy Susie, and the customer was not helped to go to the bathroom. I want you to think for a moment, what are the potential issues that could have happened? Okay, she could have tried to help herself and could have fallen. She could have wet herself, or worse, and she could have gotten on the phone and called her daughter, her son, could have called a state agency, and how would that have made us look? So, do you think this was a type of abuse? Yes, I think it was neglect on our part. And this is not what we teach our team members, right? If a customer asks us to go to the bathroom, is that considered an emergency? Yes. If any of us have been on an airplane, which I bet you a lot of you have, and the captain puts on the fasten seatbelt, how does that make you feel if you need to go to the bathroom? You're like, oh no, I should have went before he put the fasten seatbelt, because now we have to wait until he puts that off, and we're at the mercy of the captain. So it's sort of like the same thing when our customers are at the mercy of all of us. We have to think about how it feels, maybe when we're stuck in the air, or when we're on I-4 or one of the busy highways and maybe we can't get off a ramp to go. Okay, it doesn't feel good, and they're much older than we are. They can't wait. They simply can't wait, and we must really hurry and take them before we think about that break. We can wait a couple minutes for our break, can't we? Yeah, I think we can. So, who decides in our centers if abuse has occurred? They do an investigation, right? But who's doing it? Well, who's our abuse coordinator? That's right, the administrator. And probably the risk manager will be involved, all right? So we're going to do an investigation. They're going to talk to the customer if the customer is able to answer questions. And they're going to find out if neglect or any other type of abuse occurred. But sometimes they're also going to look at the potential for what could have happened. And in this case, there's potential for even greater harm. So we want to make sure that when we don't make the right decisions, what could have happened to this poor lady, okay? Mrs. Martha. All right, I want to talk to you about another situation. And this is one that a lot of us out there in video land have probably come across. This is about Mr. Max. He's a combative, highly confused 79-year-old gentleman. He's getting a bath. Now, sometimes they don't like to take a bath. They don't like to take a shower. And sometimes we've gone into the room and we say, Mr. Max, do you want a shower today? And what are they going to say? No. Sometimes we have to try to rephrase that. We have to say, would you like to get cleaned up or freshened up? Or would you like to change your clothes before your son comes or your daughter? And then maybe they would be a little bit more cooperative. Or maybe it's the time of day that we're doing things. But in this case, the CNA, her name was Sandy, is struggling with this customer. She's started out maybe not using quite the right approach, and she's getting frustrated. And the more she struggles, the more frustrated she gets. And all of a sudden, she starts saying things that she shouldn't say. And she says to Mr. Max, "Shut up, you old geezer, or you're going to be sorry you messed with me." And just as those words are finished, she looks up and she sees someone disappear from the doorway. But she thinks that that person was her good friend. So she's like, oh, thank goodness, because she's probably thinking, I would be in trouble if it's not my friend. And what I would like to ask you is, when she begins to have trouble with Mr. Max, what should she have done? What should Nancy have done? That's right. She should have stopped struggling with him and said, maybe this is not the right time to be trying to give him a bath. He's all worked up. This is not the best time. So I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to put the stuff away, and I'm going to go tell the nurse that maybe I'm going to try this again later. Or could he possibly be hurting somewhere, and maybe the nurse can give him something for pain or something, and maybe later on would be a better time. He'll be calmer or less in pain. But whatever, this is not the right time to continue, because now she has struggled, he's fought with her, and she's ended up saying something that's probably going to get her in trouble, right? So that's established, but what about the person? If that were you, what do you think you should do? That's right. You're going to have to go tell whom? Yes, the abuse coordinator, your administrator, because even though she hasn't physically done something yet, it's still a type of abuse. Which kind? That's right, verbal. And verbal can turn into something else the more frustrated she becomes. And if a family member had walked up at that time and heard what she said, what do you think they would say? Yes, that's right. They would be very upset that when they heard that, because it's like a threat to do something. So you can't let that go. And so you're going to have to ask her to come out of the room, and you will, either you or somebody else will take over, or just let him be for a while as long as he's safe, and ask her to accompany you down to the administrator or the DON, whoever happens to be there, and let them take over from there. And it's an unfortunate situation, because sometimes you do come across people who are combative and belligerent. But just to continue with the care is not the right answer. And probably, sometimes when people, team members, they come to work and they're in a bad mood to begin with. Some of you out there have probably seen the abuse video that we show, and there's a team member who comes to work, and he and his wife have had an argument before he comes to work. So he starts handling his customers in a rough manner because he's already in a bad mood before he even gets there. So sometimes that could be the reason. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk to you about has to do with risk management, and in some ways it could be abuse, neglect in some situations. And this one has to do with a customer who was admitted post-knee surgery, and he requires assistance to ambulate to the bathroom. And he was in a chair, and someone forgot to put his call light within reach. So what do you think happened? He needed to go to the bathroom. He had no way of calling staff, and so he tried to help himself to get up, because he didn't want to wet himself or soil himself. And so in the midst of trying to help himself, he falls and ends up falling and fracturing his hip. And what kind of liability do you think befalls the center then? Yes, it's going to be a liability for the center, because we can't show that his call light is within his reach. One of the last things that a team member needs to do is to make sure that the customer, whether they're in bed or in the chair, is to make sure that they have their call light, their needed items, whether it's their remote, their water, whatever it is, their Kleenex, because if they don't, they're going to be trying to reach for those items, those objects, and they don't always remember to ask before you leave. And it's always been something that staff development has taught you all out there, that one of the last things before you leave is to check on those things and to say what. Is there anything else I can get for you or that you would like? Because that's good customer service and it's showing that you care to the customer, right? Okay, another scenario that I would like you to think about is this customer who's 86-year-old is admitted with surgery. She has a fracture on her left femur and her left lower leg is wrapped in an ACE, and a nurse has transcribed orders onto the MAR to check circulation and do certain things. But the nurse who did the original transcribing of orders has failed to transcribe the entire order. And what has been left out is to remove the leg immobilizer and to check the dressing and probably change the dressing, which most nurses would probably know to do that, every day. And so what has happened in this is that because for 3 days the dressing was not checked or changed, by the time it was noticed that this dressing was not checked or changed, even though they were checking the circulation in the toes, by the time they did remove the dressing, guess what they saw? Unfortunately, that's right, nurses out there, some of the area where the surgery had happened had started to develop necrotic tissue, which means dead tissue for some of you who might not know that. And blisters had started to form and spread on the leg, the lower leg, and in a few weeks' time the lady ended up having to have her leg amputated below the knee. And what do you think, or how do you think that made her family feel? That's right. And I'm sure, even though I don't know for sure, but I imagine that a lawsuit ensued. Yes. So not a very good ending for that. And then finally, this last scenario has to do with the accuracy of food intake and how important it is that you all be very cognizant of the value of the different food groups. And when you are putting down the percentages of what the people have eaten, that you judge it as accurately as possible, or ask if you're unsure. But what is the most important human nutrient that we take in? That's right, protein. I heard you, CNAs. I know you're up on this. And so when you are judging the food intake, you want to look at the entree or the protein first. Milk too. Milk has a lot of protein in it. So this person had lost a lot of weight, and when they looked at the percentages that had been recorded, it said 100% for the majority of the recordings. So they were like, how can this be if this person is eating 100%? But when they got down to figuring it out, that the food percentages were not being recorded accurately. A lot of the times the family was bringing in food, but staff was not asking, what exactly are you bringing? The family would just tell the staff, Mom ate 100%, and not really ask what that was. Or if the customer would substitute food. For instance, if lunchtime is our biggest meal, they would have lasagna, salad, bread, dessert, that kind of thing. The customer would say, I don't really want that, I would like a grilled cheese. And they ate all of the grilled cheese. Staff would write down 100%. But it really wouldn't be 100% because that grilled cheese would not make up for all of the calories and the nutrition on a whole tray of food. So we have to be careful that we're not overestimating what a person takes in when they're substituting an item of food for a whole tray of food. Or when family is bringing in food, we want to make sure we ask, what are you bringing? And if they want to know why, just tell them. We want to make sure that they're getting enough calories and proper nutrition so that they don't lose weight. They'll understand what you're doing, okay? Because if a customer loses too much weight, it looks like that we're neglecting their care. And we don't want to be neglectful of their nutrition and them lose too much weight, because that affects their skin. It can cause them to be at a higher risk for falls and cause lots of different health problems and things like that that we don't want to have occur. Okay? So if you have any questions about their food intake, their hydration, and remember, their hydration is just as important and they need just as much as you and I. And that means 8 to 10 glasses. And you may say, well, how am I going to get 8 to 10 glasses into Miss Martha when she hates water? Well, that means you have to be a little bit creative. Miss Martha might like ice cream. She might like certain soups. She might like juicy fruits or juice. She might like clear sodas or something like that. So you have to make sure that they get those kind of, and milk, get those kind of offerings for substitutes for water. And we offer at least every 2 hours a half a cup of milk and 8 ounces with their meals. And if everybody is consistent with that, what the nurses offer, what families offer, what speech, what activities is giving, we stand a pretty good chance of getting close to that 8 to 10. Because if you don't, where do you notice it first? Lips, your mouth gets dry, then where? That's right, your skin. Maybe you don't urinate as much, and then it's going to start showing up in your labs and other things like that. And when people are incontinent, it's going to start showing up even more because they're going to start getting excoriated because their urine is more concentrated, so it burns them more. So you may say, well, what can I do to help some of these customers with some of these risk management things that you've talked about today? Well, what you can do is first read the care plan. CNAs, you've got a Cardex on the POC. Read it. Say every week I'm going to read 2 or 3 Cardexes on the POC, and I'm going to know my customer. Because if you know your customer, you're going to be able to take better care. And another thing you can do is talk to the family. Talk to them and find out when the customer was home, what did they like to drink? What did they like to eat? What did they like to snack? Nobody wants a graham cracker every night. So you've got to mix up the snacks. Give them something to drink at night with their snack so that they are more likely, because this fits in with risk management. If they're eating their snacks and drinking, then they're going to be overall more healthy, okay? It's going to cut down on falls. They're going to sleep better, okay? They won't be up all night if you're giving them snacks and helping them sleep better, okay? So you got to get to know the customers. And other things is making sure they have obstacles removed from their pathways in their room. When you're transferring them from chair to bed, making sure that, I can't see that, Mary Kay, stop.
8 more minutes.
Okay. When you're transferring them from bed to chair and chair to bed, make sure that the wheelchair legs are removed from the chair so that skin tears will happen a lot less often. Because we find that a lot of the elders get skin tears from the wheelchair legs. We should not be pushing customers in the wheelchairs if they are supposed to, if they do not have wheelchair legs, because they can get their foot hung up underneath them and break an ankle or a foot or something like that. So please be careful. No tubing should be hanging down, because not only is that a dignity issue, but it can also get caught up underneath the wheelchair. Other things could be if they have lap robes and stuff, that can also get caught up underneath the chair or in the wheelchair wheels. IV tubing and the tube feeding tubings. CNAs, remember the legal aspects part. There are certain things that you're not supposed to be touching or manipulating, like the tube feeding equipment or the oxygen equipment. If that equipment is in your way, please ask a nurse to come and help you with the equipment. If someone has a nebulizer or a CPAP, please ask the nurse to help you with that equipment. You guys, the CNAs, may put on the lubricating creams or the skin repair, but nurses must put on all the other creams that doctors have ordered, and nurses must give all medications. The nurses should not be asking you to, you know, give a med because they're having difficulty with a customer. In all of our Opus buildings, we have some customers that are admitted that are higher risk than others. We have customers that may have tracheostomies, that may have colostomies, and the CNAs may help to take care of those that have colostomies, but if the bag needs to be, the wafer needs to be changed, the nurse should change the wafer, but the CNA may change the bag or clean the bag. We also have customers that may need IV therapy, that also may need rehab therapy, complex wound care, and so we provide lots of services for high-risk type customers, and even sometimes dialysis. We can do peritoneal dialysis. Even though we don't get it often, we do provide those type of services. We want to answer call lights promptly. And what does that mean by answering call lights promptly? 3 to 5 minutes probably would be a good time frame to think about. If it's a bathroom light, that's an emergency, because if we don't answer those quickly, then people may try to get up and out of there on their own, which could lead to a fall. Follow standards of practice while staying within your scope of practice. Nurses, make sure you do timely assessments upon admission, because if even one assessment is skipped over, it could be a liability situation. So there's certain things that should not be put off. You want to do a fall risk assessment, skin assessment, pain assessment, things like that, because those are imperative that they're done in a timely manner. Make sure timely documentation is done, following the care plan interventions, complete exception reports, and timely communication about these high-risk customers is important. And make sure that your CNAs are informed about these issues, these things that affect your customers. Because if you don't let your CNAs know, for instance, that your customer has been identified as a wanderer or as a fall risk, or that they need to be turned or have their heels elevated and stuff like that, then that becomes an even higher liability. The CNA is your eyes and ears and an important asset to the nursing team. Just like any department can't be without the other. We are an Opus team. We need each other, and there's not one department that's more important than the other. And I, for one, want every one of you to be on my team. Thank you, Opus.